America, 2025. In the heart of sun-baked Texas, amid scattered wastelands and ramshackle buildings, my platoon prepared for battle. My name is Alex, and I'm a soldier. Not a hero, not a prophet, just a survivor. The day began as usual, hot, heavy, and unforgiving. We have received intelligence reports that a suspicious group has been spotted in the area, possibly terrorists or some kind of insurgency. The command ordered not to lose a minute. I didn't think about the future, I didn't dream about the world. War is a routine, gray and muddy, like the dust that rises from the road after passing a truck. Just shoot, move, survive. Our armored vehicles, covered in dust and scratches, set off down the deserted road. The sun beat down mercilessly, and it seemed that the earth was about to melt. Nothing but sparse shrubs and the charred remains of trees. The sky was icy and lifeless. We were at our limit. Each of us is tired and silent, hidden behind armor and weapons. Suddenly, everything exploded. An ambush. There was a sharp crack to the left, gunfire, explosions, and the screeching of bullets. The car ahead bounced on a landmine, screaming metal and fire. The flames burned the air, filling everything with a metallic taste. Alarms, shouts, the command fire to kill. I was wounded, a sharp pain in my side, and everything started to turn cloudy. My heart was pounding wildly, as if it was about to burst out of my chest. My body refused to respond, my hands were shaking, my legs felt like cotton wool. I fell to the ground, closing my eyes, waiting for the cold abyss of death. But she didn't come. Instead of darkness, there is light. It wasn't blinding, but it went deep, warming and exposing every thought and every feeling at the same time. In this light, there was nothing superfluous, only pure truth. He was standing in front of me, not like the pictures in the church or the movies. He was alive, real, with eyes that were filled with sadness and hope at the same time. No words, no loud statements, just a look. Time has stopped. I realized that I was on the edge of two worlds. And he is the guide. The one who leads me through the darkness into the light. Alex, I heard a voice say in my heart, what you see next will change everything. But be prepared. The truth is always scary. And with these words, my journey began, from which there was no turning back. When I opened my eyes, everything seemed strange and familiar at the same time. Howls, gunshots, screams, they now sounded like distant noises, as if from another dimension. I lay on the hot ground, blood mingling with the dust, and every drop tasted bitter on my tongue. Someone was whispering nearby, and the soldiers around me were panicking, but my mind was drifting back to where the light I'd seen before I died met. My head rang, the truth is always terrible. Why? Why is fear the first reaction to the truth? I remembered the faces of my comrades, their fear, their hope, their weariness. War is not just about fighting and dying. It's an inner hell where everyone fights their own demons. Suddenly, the words of the other world came back to me. What you see next will change everything. What does it mean? What lies ahead for me? While I was trying to connect my scattered thoughts, my eyes caught a glimpse of shadows in the distance. But these were no ordinary shadows. They moved in a skewed way, as if they were dancing on the edge of reality and dream. Eyes shone in them, cold, motionless, unfathomable. These weren't flesh and blood enemies. They were ghosts, embodying the fear that lurks in every human being. They whispered words that tore at the soul, you are alone, you are forgotten, you have lost. I felt a shiver run through me. At that moment, I realized that these creatures were symbols. They can't hurt me if I don't let them. These are my fears, my doubts, my unanswered questions. And then it's him again. The one who gave me light in the dark. Don't be afraid of them, Alex, his voice said inside me. Fear is a prison. Free yourself, and you will see the way. But how to get free? How to weather this internal storm? I pressed my hand to the wound, trying to stop the blood from flowing, and with every second that passed, I felt the power inside me not waning. It's growing. This is not just a desire to survive, it is a call deeper than life, than death. There's a long way to go. The path between shadows and light. A path that will reveal secrets that the world doesn't even know about. And I knew I would go that way. Because I'm not just a soldier anymore. I am a witness to what is hidden beyond. The first few days after the injury were like oblivion, as if time had melted into thick wax. In the hospital, surrounded by white walls and the smell of antiseptic, I was a prisoner of my own consciousness. Every noise seemed to echo from another world, and every glance seemed to search for answers to questions I didn't have. But there was still that light inside me, that invisible thread that connected me to something bigger. Sometimes I heard whispers soft, barely audible, like the wind passing through cracks in the walls. These were words, but not simple ones. They were born from the depths, forcing you to think, to peer into the meaning of life, death, and fate. What are you looking for, Alex? Why are you running away from the truth that has already found you? In the hospital room, I felt like I was on the edge between two worlds, the real world and something beyond human comprehension. I had strange dreams, cities without time, people with faces covered in light and shadow, books whose pages burned without leaving any ash. One night a priest came up to me, a tall man with a tired face and kind eyes. "Alex," he said quietly, "many people here are afraid of death. But true death is not the end. This is the beginning." I looked at him, and there was a familiar peace in his eyes. I told him about the light, what I had seen, the voices and shadows. He smiled, but it was more like a sign of understanding than comfort. "You passed through a gate that doesn't open to everyone," he said. "Jesus showed you the truth that the world is afraid to accept." At the end of 2025 and in 2026, great changes. But they won't come by themselves, we have to be ready. The priest's words were a heavy weight, but also a fire in my heart. I realized that this light was not an accident, not a dream. This is a challenge. Challenge the world, my heart, my soul. And I realized that it was impossible to return to normal life. I was different. The first few weeks after I was discharged from the hospital were a test not only of my body, but also of my spirit. I returned to the city, which seemed familiar, but now I was a stranger, like a stranger in my own home. The Texas streets, dusty roads, and old barracks seemed like part of some dream from which it was impossible to wake up. Every sound, the rustle of wind in the dry bushes, the clink of broken glass in an empty alley brought a strange sense of unease. It was as if there was more than the visible world around me, as if someone or something was watching from the shadows. In this world where everything seemed to remain the same, I began to notice details that I had previously ignored. Strange symbols appeared on the walls of houses, not graffiti, but ancient signs, as if scratched out by time. One of them looked like a crucifix, but not a human one, but made of light and shadow at the same time. The other was a clock with blurry hands, whose numbers were written in a strange language that looked like forgotten runes. I felt that these signs were messages. But to whom? And from where? One day, as I was returning home late at night, I saw a small light flickering in the dark on a deserted street. As I approached, I noticed the old man. His eyes shone with a quiet light, and he spoke as if he could see right through me. "You see them," he said, pointing to the symbols on the walls. "They don't come from the past, but from the future. The world is changing, Alex, and what you've seen is just the beginning." His words echoed in my mind. I began to realize that the light that Jesus showed me was not just a gift or a test. This is the key to the secrets that will be revealed in 2026. Every night I had the same dreams, a silent city where people were waiting in line for an invisible door. Behind this door is a radiant light that beckons, but scares at the same time. And the voice, the same voice that spoke to me on the edge of life and death. "The choice is yours." I started to wonder, what kind of choice is this? And why should I be the one to see it first? With each passing day, I felt my inner fire grow stronger. The pain in my side still reminded me of the war, but now it was a reminder of my calling to bring light to darkness. My life has changed forever. I had answers ahead of me, or maybe more questions. But I was ready. On my way home, I saw Texas, not just a state, but a landscape torn apart by internal contradictions. A war? No. It was a silent war, a war on the edge, a war of shadows and hidden conflicts. National Guard patrols roamed the streets, and the news broke daily about the migrant crisis, border closures, and growing divisions between the states and the federal government. I could feel the tension hanging in the air, like a harbinger of something much bigger than just a political crisis. But for me, the silence was deceptive. The light that Jesus showed me didn't disappear, it burned inside like an invisible beacon. Sometimes I noticed stares, empty, lifeless eyes that looked at me from the crowd, as if they saw something over my shoulders that they didn't understand. I began to hear whispers not only in my dreams, but also in the streets, in cafes, in the silence of the night. The time of choice is coming, the voice whispered. Who will accept the light, who will remain in the dark? One evening, as the city was sinking into dusk, I stopped at an abandoned building. There, on the wall, were new symbols, strange patterns, as if written in light and shadow at the same time. My heart began to pound faster. At that moment, I remembered the words of Jesus, "The truth is always terrible." And now I knew that fear was not an enemy, but a warning. A warning that you will have to go through fire and water. My life has changed forever. I became not only a witness, but also a participant in events that can change the fate of not only me, but the whole world. Every morning I woke up with the feeling that the world around me had changed, but not completely. It's as if I'm looking at familiar things through a crack in which other images flicker, light and shadow intertwine in a pattern I can't decipher. The questions echoed in my head like an echo in the empty hall. Why me? What does this light mean? What about the fear that pierced me in my darkest moments? Once I noticed that time seemed to slow down around me. As the seconds dragged by, the sounds grew louder, every rustle, every breath of air, seemed to have a secret meaning. I began to see strange signs on the asphalt, on the walls of buildings, in the cracks between the bricks. They glowed with a faint blue light, barely noticeable, but their symbolism was clear: a cross, a clock without hands, an open book. These symbols seemed to invite me to the path that I must take. That evening I heard his voice again, calm, deep, and full of understanding. Alex, fear is not your enemy. It is a signpost of the path. Only by going through the darkness will you find the light that will change everything. I closed my eyes and saw scenes, people facing a choice between light and shadow, life and oblivion. The year 2026 was already whispering its approach, promising challenges and changes. My soul was torn apart, trying to hold everything inside: fear, hope, faith, and doubt. But all I knew was that there was no way back. I became not just a soldier, but the keeper of a secret that has yet to be revealed. It had been a few weeks since I'd left the hospital, but every morning seemed like a new challenge. Texas, its streets, houses, and people were no longer the same. They seemed to reflect the inner chaos that was tormenting me from the inside. I often stopped at the edge of the city, where the dusty roads were lost in the vast emptiness. Where the sky was vast and endless, I tried to find answers to the questions that burned my mind. Moments of battle came back to me: fire, explosions, the smell of gunpowder and blood. But now these memories have become not just the horror of war, but symbols of something more. On one of these evenings, I met a woman. Her eyes were as clear as water, and her voice was quiet, but hard as stone. "You see things that others can't," she said. "Light and shadow are intertwined in your destiny." She told me about Prophecies, ancient texts that herald a time of change. They talked about those who have passed through light and darkness, who will become a bridge between the worlds. The end of 2025 and the whole of 2026 are years of trials, she whispered. You must be prepared to face them. Her words were like an incantation, seeping into my soul. I felt the boundaries between reality and vision blurring. That night I had a dream, a huge clock hanging over the desert, the hands of which froze at the moment when light and darkness merge into one. People were queuing at the gate, where an unknown world glowed behind it. I'm one of them. The awakening was abrupt, my heart was beating like it was about to burst out. I knew that this dream was not just a warning, but a call to action. As I drove home, I noticed more and more signs on the walls, in the sand, even in the occasional crack in the asphalt. They grew brighter, their meaning clearer. The shadows of the past and the prophecies of the future were woven into one unbroken thread. I was ready. Because I knew that my journey was just beginning. The days grew longer, and the nights deeper and darker. The city seemed to be falling into a dream, but in this dream there were glimmers of something unthinkable, something that could barely be realized, but could not be ignored. One evening, as I was returning from work, I noticed a figure on an abandoned street. She was standing in the shadows, but her eyes shone with an unnatural, almost hypnotic light. "Alex," a soft voice said, like a whisper on the wind, "you're on the verge of a change." The figure stepped forward. It was the woman I'd seen in my dreams. Her face was both familiar and alien, like a reflection in water distorted by time. "You're afraid," she said. "But fear is not the enemy. He teaches. It warns you." I was trying to figure out who she was, what she wanted. A storm was building inside me, doubt and hope tangled in a tangle. "What lies ahead?" I asked. She smiled, but there was something bitter about it. "The end of 2025 is the beginning of a new era," she said. "The world will change. But not everyone will survive this change. Many will be lost in the shadows." Her words sounded like a prophecy, reminding me of the voice of Jesus who first showed me the light in the dark. "You are chosen, Alex," she continued, "because you can see the truth when others close their eyes." I felt the fire ignite inside me again. It wasn't just knowledge, it was a call to action. After she left, the city seemed different. The shadows grew longer, the sounds louder, and the signs clearer. I knew that what lay ahead was not just a struggle for survival, but a struggle for the soul of the world. And I couldn't give up my path. As the nights grew longer, I often woke up in a cold sweat. Questions roared in my head, but they didn't stop, only multiplied like a fire eating dry grass. Why me? Why now? Who was this woman who emerged from the shadows and spoke with a voice like the wind? And what did her words mean? Not everyone can stand the change. Every day I looked at the city, at its streets, where people seemed lost in their worries, unaware of what was looming over them. But another world was open to me, a world of shadows and light, of change and trials. One day, during a long walk on the outskirts of the city, I noticed a fire in the distance, not ordinary, but some kind of ghostly, bluish. As I approached, I saw that the flames were coming from an old tree whose bark was covered with the same strange symbols that I had seen on the walls and asphalt. The flames didn't burn, they seemed alive, breathing, like the heart of the place. As I stood there, I felt something ancient, deep, and powerful awaken within me. At that moment, the voice, no longer a whisper, but firm and confident, spoke to me again. "Alex, the journey will be difficult. But without fire, steel is not born. Without trials, faith does not appear." I closed my eyes and remembered the look of Jesus, the light that lit up my darkness on the verge of death. Now I knew that this light lived inside me, and its power was growing every day. But next to faith there is always doubt. And this flame of doubt was not just a fear, but a test of my soul. I knew that what lay ahead was not only a struggle with the outside world, but also an internal battle for every moment of light. And I was ready to face her. The world around me began to fall apart at the seams. The familiar realities seemed to disintegrate, like glass reflecting light and shadow at the same time. News reports were increasingly talking about instability, economic crises, natural disasters, outbreaks of violence, and incomprehensible mass phenomena. People were at a loss, looking for a foothold in the chaos. I saw it with my own eyes. The neighbor who had previously seemed good-natured and calm, now spoke with emptiness, as if someone was talking to him from another dimension. Friends drifted away, afraid of what they didn't understand. I kept seeing the signs on the walls, in the sand, in the cracks of the asphalt. They became more and more explicit, prophetic. In one of my dreams, I met Jesus again, but now his face was full of both tenderness and determination. "Alex," he said, "there will be rifts ahead, not only in the earth, but in the souls of people as well. Your task is to be the bridge between these worlds, the light that connects the disparate parts. When I awoke, I felt a new power pulsing in my chest, a power bestowed not only by the light, but also by trials. Now I knew that to save the world, I had to go through my own hell and get to the other side. My fears didn't go away, but they became fuel for the fire inside me. Time is no longer linear. As the days blurred into nights, I became increasingly lost in these fractures of reality. The people around me were changing, not only in their behavior, but also in their essence. It was as if darkness was beginning to break through their souls, pushing them towards fear and despair. As the city descended into chaos, protests turned violent, systems went haywire, and the sense of an impending cataclysm became unbearable. But in the midst of all this noise, I could hear an inner voice, the same one that had spoken to me from the brink of death. That night, I went out on the roof of an old building and looked up at the stars, trying to find answers among them. Suddenly a light appeared in front of me, not bright, but warm, and in that light I saw him, Jesus. "Alex," he said, "it's time for a choice. You must lead those who are ready to follow the light. But remember, the path is illuminated not only by light, but also by shadow." His words were heavy as a stone on his heart, but there was hope in them. I knew there was no going back. It was up to me to see if the world could get through this intersection without losing itself. I was determined to be a light in this darkness, no matter who I was with. The moment of truth has arrived. The world seemed to hang in the balance, torn apart by internal conflicts, fear, and uncertainty. But there was a fire burning inside me that no one could put out. I was standing in front of the crowd, people who had lost their bearings, but were hungry for truth and light. My words were not just a speech, but a wake-up call, a call to the power of faith that can overcome any darkness. "We are on the threshold of a new era," I said, "and each of us chooses whether to be the light or the shadow. Fear is a test, but love and faith are our weapons." Their eyes met with hope, and a small light lit up in everyone's heart. Jesus came to me again, not in a vision, but in the depths of my soul, to remind me. Believe, even when all seems lost. Because after the longest night, it's dawn. The year 2026 was a time of trials, but also a time of rebirth. War, political cataclysms, fears, all these are just shadows that are dispelled by the light of those who chose to believe. I've changed forever. And now my path is to go forward, to be a light in this dark world. Because there is always light at the end.